It's another moment, ladies and gentlemen, for us to be together on today's edition of the program. It is Global Insider. Today, we are focusing on NATO's cognitive warfare, looking at the problematic, the preamble or the battle for the mind. So today we're going to navigate NATO's cognitive warfare document proposed in June of the year 2020, and of course this document attracted criticisms due to potential effects it will actually have and already has on the human mind, especially in times of conflict and the battle for the minds of people around the globe. We are also going to explore the significant steps and strategies outlined in the NATO cognitive warfare document, while shedding light on the potential setbacks of the document, especially in the connected world. So today let's analyze how this cognitive warfare affects society as underlined in the times of conflict. And this is Global Insight. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. NATO alliance claims that threat from the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China solely behind the advent of the NATO's cognitive warfare document, which has attracted criticisms over the years since it came to the public. And we're going straight away to uncovering the panel this day to give more understanding on this cognitive dissonance and how the battle for the mind can affect particularly civilians or vulnerable people in the times of turbulence or conflict. And we go to meet YULIA BERG in Moscow in her capacity as political scientist and also founder of GLOBUS Experts Club. Hello to you, dear YULIA, and welcome this day.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for availing yourself to India. We're being joined by Professor JAGDISH KATHRI, who is an author and, of course, a global analyst. Hello to you, Professor. It's a pleasure having you this day.
Hello, ma'am. Namaskar from India, and thank you for this opportunity to learn and share on this very important topic. Thank you very much.
Indeed, it is very important, a platform where we learn and share knowledge and how we can also reach a conclusion on making comment on issues that affect the interconnected world. ARNAUD, a political consultant, will be joining us in the course of the program. But before he joins, we're going to go straight away into understanding our topic for this day. And I kick off with you, dear Yulia. We're looking at NATO's cognitive warfare and the battle for the mind, but it will be imperative for us to understand the documents which, according to reports, was outlined in 2020. That was June in 2020, where some key points of the document focus on the definition of cognitive warfare and strategies that these NATO nations actually adopt in trying to advance the agenda and it happenings in the course of an informational war. So in your own perspective, holistically, I want to understand the concept of the cognitive warfare masterminded by the NATO alliance.
Thank you for the question. I think it's critically important at this point in time to understand what kind of reality we're living in, right? And at the moment, we see a lot of escalations all over the world. We see a lot of military conflicts, a lot of fighting, and clearly there are different types of warfare being used in all of those conflicts. And when we, as a society, are unable to choose a different kind of a path, then conflicts get escalated to the military level. Yet at the same time, it's very important to understand that in modern day society, having all the digital and IT technologies being very much interconnected and being, I would say, living in the information space almost 24/7, it's important to understand that our brains can or are already becoming a battlefield when somebody else is trying to pursue their interests, because before they start firing guns or, shelling, the first thing they try to do is to convince the people to choose one way of, development or another. And in many cases, the way of thinking or the perception, the paradigm is being implemented into our brain without our, let's say, knowledge or consent. So actually, if you go through the NATO website, there are quite a lot of reports of the kind, and this document is not the only one describing in quite a lot of details various kinds of psychological operations or various kinds of cognitive hacking methods. But I think what is essential to understand is that if someone has to apply all kinds of tools, all kinds of instruments and methods to change our way of thinking, this is definitely a manipulation that is misleading in the first hand, right? Because truth doesn't need sophisticated methods of dissemination. Truth is something that we feel resonating in our consciousness, and it's very simple to navigate through life using the moral compass. Yeah. And if someone has to apply all those sophisticated methods, it means that they're trying to take us away from the the path of truth somewhere else to some distorted direction.
And of course, that's where we have the bond of contention faced with this turbulence and ideological war. How can we actually decipher or differentiate truth from misinterpretation or misinformation, especially across the internet ecosystem? Coming to you, Professor Jagdish, of course, when we look at the preamble of this topic, we tend to see that this topic largely deals with the human mind, how we conceive ideas, and how sometimes the environment has maybe a role to play in how human beings reason. So we want to get it from your own perspective, and of course in your capacity as an author on very critical issues, we want to contextualize it with the NATO cognitive warfare. Do you think it's a feasible thing that the NATO alliance should maybe bring forth this document, argument that they're trying to maybe prepare if Russia or Beijing happen to attack, as they have threatened these nations, and also trying to fight misinformation and other aspects in the information hour. What is your perspective on this?
Thank you, ma'am. As ma'am Yulia mentioned, we are living into a very different kind of times where we are witnessing almost a genocide of Palestinian by forces, and so the forces that are supported by through weapons by a so-called superpower, and we are not able to stop it from happening. And history is not going to forgive us for this inaction. And I would like to begin by saluting those young university students in Western countries who are protesting continuously, even risking their career for end of such wars. Now, secondly, I would like to mention that in past few decades, especially in India, we have seen that first there has been a warfare conducted through drugs, where from neighboring countries, drugs were supplied to young people and they were made addicted. And it took a whole generation to overcome this warfare. And now, since last few years, we have seen digital addiction, which is also influencing the way we think, the way we act. And now we are talking about another kind of cognitive warfare to add to this, where there is battle for controlling the brain, or rather I should say controlling the minds of people all over the world. Now, this is perhaps one of the most dangerous weapons that will be used, because it has no geographical boundaries, no barriers, and it doesn't require any traditional warfare. It is 24/7 and can be applied subtly in a subtle way without being known by the people who are victims. So this is going to be one of the most dangerous and long-lasting effects of this kind of warfare. And I simply don't understand, why do we need it? You see, I recall a famous quote by a world leader that said that, am I not killing my enemies by making them friends? Just plain common sense. If we promote peace, friendship, equity, togetherness, then we lose enemies. And why do we need all kinds of warfare? We already have traditional warfare of very sophisticated kind. We have bombs, we have tanks, we have nuclear warfare, we have cyber warfare, information warfare. We have got enough warfare that can destroy the whole world for a number of times. Why do we need to control minds? I mean, this needs to be really asked by those brilliant minds who are working upon it. Misutilizing the scientific progress that is made in neuroscience, in biotechnology, in social sciences, and for what for? I think the only aim is to continue their hegemony on the world and to satisfy the inflated ego of some political powers, nothing else. So it has to be debated, it has to be opposed by all means all over the world, and I hope this discussion will help in that. Thank you.
Indeed, the objective is to see that the discussion brings more understanding into some of these strategies. And Yulia, coming back to you, we asked just the simple question, what is the future of international security? When Professor Jagdish actually pointed out that when NATO takes such a decision, you see that the goal is just to ensure the hegemony dominance. And we know lately, before visiting the People's Republic of China, the Russian leadership, Vladimir Putin, highlighted and slammed the fact that Western nations are actually seeking for dominance in disregard of other nations. With all of these, what is the future of international security?
I think it's important to understand that at the moment it becomes more and more complicated to find the truth in the information space, right? Because instead of having more or less clear black and white understanding, it all becomes various kinds of shades of gray, and it becomes difficult to distinguish the actual intentions. Truth is being hidden under many layers of various lies, or it's being mixed with interpretations or misinterpretations of facts, and it becomes really hard to understand and see the subject of discussion clearly. So I think that for international security, it becomes also very difficult to have clear reference points that would help them understand which way is left and which way is right, as it's becoming very difficult. When we look at the current conflicts, for instance, and you just brought up the the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. So it's one of those examples where it's really hard to tell what exactly is happening, and it's really hard for the people to understand what they should be doing. Because when you look at the situation that the people of for example, Donetsk People's Republic were facing starting from 2014. It was when after the coup d'etat, they would be attacked by their own army, which was supposed to be protecting them. So that was called the anti-terrorist operation, but by the terrorists, they meant citizens of those regions, right? Sure. So sometime after, in 2022, when the special military operation started, and the Russian troops have entered those regions, it was again very hard for the people to understand what they should be doing, because on the one hand, they were getting a chance to be liberated from the regime that many of them were not supporting. But at the same time, in that period of time, from 2014 to 2022, there was such an intense informational campaign that many people started hating Russians by definition. And if you look at some of the content that was being produced, they were even spreading hatred targeted at children, babies, basically saying that anything somehow Russian is pure evil. But at the same time, those are people that are ethnically, culturally, and in terms of language, religion, and everything else, are extremely close to the Russians. So I think one of the key problems and one of the key issues that would be really hard to deal with in terms of international security would be trying to understand those actual red lines and turning points, because this kind of propaganda and the spread of hatred, it starts slowly but surely, and then it's being spread gradually. So we all know, for example, the technology of the so-called Overton window, when something that is initially considered unacceptable, after going through different stages, becomes normal for the society. So first, for example, I don't know, we can take anything like this, the multiple gender discussion. So if you talked about it back in the 50s in the same, country of the United States, probably the people would be saying that it's absurd and nonsense. But first, once the discussion is raised, they start questioning what is the actual definition of a gender, what does it mean, what does a biological man or woman imply, and everything else. Then they start talking about it more, then bringing up examples, then trying to change the original perception, and then times after and rounds after, it becomes normal to have children at the age of 10 or 11 picking a gender they want based on, I don't know what the possible reasoning could be, because if a kid at that age is not able to pick a profession, in this kind of cases, they're almost forced to pick a gender, which implies that they might be undergoing through irreversible surgeries. Sure. And it means that unlike the profession, there would be no way back to the original. And given the fact that there is also the hormone treatment, it brings irreversible changes, and aside for that, it brings up various side effects. But this is just an example of how even much more simple things can be cognitively hacked. So if we talk about fueling conflicts between people or between generations or people and the government and whatsoever else, it's much easier. And concluding this bit, let me just bring up a quote from that very document that we're talking about now, just to illustrate that if someone is still thinking that it's not happening, I mean, it's even described in all of the details. So the document says, the brain will be the battlefield of the 21st century. Humans are the contested domain, and future conflicts will likely occur amongst the people digitally first and physically thereafter, in proximity to hubs of political and economic power. So this is what they disclose regarding the methods. And then they conclude by saying that the human is very often the main vulnerability. And it should be acknowledged that in order to protect NATO's human capital, but also to be able to benefit from our adversaries' vulnerabilities, the methods are being explored. So then it says that the objective of cognitive warfare is to harm societies and not only the military. So these are just methods of bringing the society down and making sure that the enemy is defeated. But the enemy is no longer the military, which is protected by international law, and there are still rules and regulations even for, the war times and the opposing conflict participants. But here there is no protection, there is no international regulations that would be protecting peoples and their brains that have actually become a battlefield for, different paradigms and for different power struggles, basically.
Indeed, talking about power struggles with you, Professor Jagdish, looking at the peculiarities of the document and of course how the human mind is being made to become a weapon. We want to look at how the increasing geopolitical changes across the global world have actually brought about maybe some difficulties in this NATO's cognitive warfare, and some of these difficulties or challenges. What do you think are the right parameters to be able to solve this and reduce the effects, especially the adverse effects on the human mind?
Thank you, ma'am. I am again reminded of a famous quote that human mind, once it is stretched by an idea, it is almost irreversible to bring it back to its original position. And this is what happens with if it is infected by an idea. We are already seeing the impacts of these fake news, deep fake videos, the social media explosion, and that is being used to spread hatred among societies, among people, on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of religion, or the language. So we are already witnessing the harmful effects of these technological things which are used as weapons by divisive groups and also sometimes politicians to gain some political advantage. But and if we are adding cognitive warfare also to this list, I mean, we can simply imagine the ill effects it will have on our society and the whole society. You see, it is possible and it is going to happen that these cognitive warfare systems, they will be misutilized by terrorist groups also, by non-state actors also. And it will be hard for the governments to control the impacts of these warfare. So we have to be very cautious about it. It can only be done through inculcating right education, right values and ethics in the minds of people right from beginning, so that they can differentiate between what is good and what is evil, and what should be grasped by them from the media, and how their thought process has to be saved from ill effects of the other medias. And spirituality will be of certain help into inculcating these values and ethics right from our education. So that is what I would like to add here.
Thank you for that, Professor Jagdish. Welcome, ARNAUD Devely, of course, joining your capacity as a political consultant. We are looking at this NATO cognitive warfare, and when you look at the framework of action, the document outlines a framework for, action to enhance NATO's capabilities in cognitive warfare, emphasizing the importance of maybe coordination, collaboration, and capacity building among member states and partner organizations. This brings us to the question on how, or maybe the instruments or tools we can use to check the activities of NATO, which are detrimental to the human mind, especially as the informational war is concerned.
Well, thank you for having me. Sorry for the delay.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, the tools that we can use obviously are in the information field. We know that NATO has always attempted to justify its interventions by first unrolling a media campaign. We've seen it happen in Iraq with the WMD, I call it the marketing campaign. This was unrolled at the close of summer 2002, and it was easy for a informed mind to see how from early September of that year all the way through March 2003, there was a coordinated campaign to basically capture the public's mind, public's perception as to the role of Iraq in the wake of 9/11. And as people who follow those kind of things might recall, we were dealing with a regime that was characterized by being a secular regime, whereas those people who allegedly committed the 9/11 attacks were religious zealots. So this was, on the surface of things, easy to identify as being flawed arguments. But nonetheless, using flawed intelligence, and I'm referring in that respect to a special outfit which was created, Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kaptowski, who worked at the Pentagon at the time, wrote extensively about it, the Office of Special Plan. The Office of Special Plan was an outfit that was created by some neoconservatives, and under the direct command and control of the office of the then Vice President, I forgot his name, Dick Cheney, and they were tasked to report exclusively to him. And next thing you know, whatever was cooked inside the Office of Special Plan was then repeated systematically on the cable news network on Sunday morning, all around the clock. And the elements were peddled, recycled by a few selected individuals within the military-industrial media complex of the time. And next thing you know, they had basically the public believed that the then regime headed by former President Saddam Hussein was in cahoots with Al-Qaeda, that he had essentially provided them with everything they needed, including shelter. And this was never disputed. This was repeated constantly. And the repetition and the hammering of such a line of talking, a line of argumentation, basically drawn out any other alternative narrative on the issue. Let's recall also that when someone tried to deviate from the agreed upon script, I refer to that respect to the late U.S. Ambassador Joseph Wilson III. Joseph Wilson III was approached by the same cabal and requested to go to Niger to inquire about intel bearing on aluminum tubes and yellow cakes from Niger. Yeah. This line was brought forward to support the notion that Saddam Hussein was working on WMDs. And so when Joe Wilson went to Niger, he basically came to the conclusion that this whole junket was but a fool's errand. And the first thing he did on his way back was to command a full op-ed page in the New York Times, in which he wrote his account of what he had not found in Niger. And actually, this was the title of the op-ed piece, What I Did Not Find in Niger. Yeah. And this was basically a big hole in the narrative that was trying to be imposed on the American public. And so in order to deal with this, essentially what the system did is they started attacking him personally by outing the then NOC status of his wife, Valerie Plame, who incidentally was working on nuclear non-proliferation as far as Iran was concerned at the time. But nonetheless, they went as far as committing a federal offense by outing her status as a Central Intelligence non-official cover agent, thereby jeopardizing the lives of probably dozens of people who at the time were providing information on the issue that she was working on. But that basically is how the system works. They roll out a marketing campaign aimed at obtaining and manufacturing public consent on any given issue. They hyperventilate the issue to such a strident and hysterical level that everybody is almost subdued into adhering to this narrative. And anyone who remotely expresses doubt as to such and such aspect of the narrative is either accused of being a collaborator with the regime, whatever regime that might be, or basically ridiculed and subjected to public ridicule. So this is a very efficient method, cognitive warfare method used by NATO. NATO or countries associated with a NATO, what I call mission creep operation. And so we've seen this happen again in the context of Ukraine, of course, And we can expect them to use it again when they do decide to turn their attention to China. We already can have an idea of how they are intending to proceed on the matter. Since for the last few years, the topic of the alleged genocide going on in the Uyghur province of China has been peddled around Western media constantly through some very targeted key actors working on behalf of NATO and or U.S. interest in that respect. And those people basically are constantly invited on TV shows, information quote unquote, and to such an extent that their omnipotence in the media draws out any kind of alternate, version of the event. And so what we have to understand is, to NATO circles, facts do not matter. What matters is the control of the narrative and the idea that they can deal with here and there anyone who happens to deviate from the narrative by either canceling them purely and simply, or by exposing them to public opprobrium, or by disqualifying them altogether.
I will stay with you briefly, Arnaud, DEVELAY, given the insight you've presented so far pertaining this crucial topic. It brings us to the conclusion that the mind, of course, the place of the mind is very pivotal in the ideological war that is ongoing. So how can this concept of cognitive warfare provide understanding of different technologies, especially in the present geopolitical context?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You quite mentioned, of course, a lot of things, the trip to Niger by the former and later American ambassador, and then we are looking at, with the NATO's cognitive warfare, we actually point technology as one of the tools that they used. So now the question is, how can this concept of the cognitive warfare provide an understanding of different technologies in the present day society? Let us use the present geopolitical crisis happening across the globe to understand how technology is used by NATO and its other alliances to maybe control the minds of the vulnerable people.
Well, to be sure, I think it was Naomi Wolf who wrote a book, a seminal book back in the 2000s called, I forgot the name of it, but the book bore on basically the concept of sideration. You have to basically overwhelm public mental ability to handle a watershed, time-changing moment, such as 9/11 was at the time, such as the 2008 financial crisis was, such as the COVID operation was, to somehow disarm the mind. This is how you do it. You always create somehow a crisis of great proportion and traumatic effect on the mind in order to disarm the masses' ability to think things through. And so once a crisis event like 9/11 starts wearing off, you have to be able to somehow pull another one out of the drawer, out of your toolbox, so as to create this diversion. And so the idea is to always keep the masses on the defensive as far as their cognitive ability is concerned. Another way to do it, obviously, is through a economic, so to speak, model, which aims at getting people to be primarily concerned about how they're going to survive. I mean, let's remind our viewers that a significant portion of the American public, and I would dare to say the Western public at large, lives paycheck to paycheck. No one has the time to delve into the issues that we are talking about today. Only a few people, which are then manageable, can somehow attempt to provide some kind of clarity. But for the overwhelming people, and you only need about 60% to be under control. Yeah. What I call the big middle. Those are the people, the big middle, who keep voting for the same people in office, which are implementing policies that are going against the public interest, if we look at things objectively. But nonetheless, they are conditioned to stay in the appropriate spot and not to try to come out of their boxes or to change lane. And those who are on the margin, either on the right or on the left, or either on top or at the bottom, are again, as I was referring to earlier, summarily dispatched by, vilifying them or calling them extremists and conspiracy theory. I mean, the word conspiracy theory, let's recall, was invented by the CIA in the wake of the JFK assassination. Anybody who started writing about the inconsistencies of the official conclusion rendered by the Warren Commission, were accused of being conspiracy theorists. So that's the old method that we used to see also in the Eastern Bloc. Someone who basically deviates from the official narrative can be somehow ridiculed, and in some cases sent to a mental asylum or sanatorium. Okay. So this is basically how the system functions. Oh, and I recall the book that I was talking about earlier. It's the shock doctrine. They apply the shock doctrine.
Okay. Thank you for that, dear Arnaud. Let me continue the conversation with you, dear Yulia. We are looking now at maybe the place of culture and spirituality in this warfare or cognitive warfare masterminded by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and its alliance.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's a very important one when we talk about various kinds of manipulation methods that are being applied and being transmitted through the media and through various other kinds of mechanisms. So it's important to understand that the attacks that are being used against human beings of, let's say, enemy societies, or human beings who have a way of thinking that doesn't fit into the model that, for instance, in this case, the NATO members want to impose on the people. So those methods operate not just at the level of spreading certain kinds of narratives or spreading certain kinds of news information, but they also affect our thinking at the subconscious level through various kinds of symbols, through various kinds of images. So it's something that we do not even give a thought to, but it does affect the brain, like, the reflex system. I mean, you see the red light and you know that you probably should stop. You see the green light and you know that you can go. So this kind of subconscious associations and the way our brain itself processes information based on images, based on symbols and everything else. And here, when we talk about video content and digital content, a lot of it has to do with this cognitive warfare that is not even obvious in our everyday life. So the attack is harsh. The attack is happening in such a way that we do not even realize that we're under the influence. And the issue of spirituality and religion and culture is essential to have protection against this kind of attacks, because a person that has a clear value system, a person that has a clear moral compass that is oriented not just to the mind, because it's easy to fool the mind, to fog the mind, and to trick the mind. But what never lies is your consciousness and your heart. And unfortunately, we're being separated from our instincts and reflexes. We're being taught to stay silent. We're being to react when we see something unfair happening. We're being taught that black is white and white is black. So here, having a clear understanding of own value system, of, you know, simple things like how does our body function. And the reason why I bring it up is that the subconscious mechanisms that are also being affected by the psychological warfare, they provoke psychosomatic diseases, and they provoke certain kinds of body reactions, and body never lies. So paying more attention to the way the body reacts, the way your instincts react to certain kind of situations, information. Does it bring up hatred? Does it bring up aggression or whatsoever else? Yeah. And being conscious about the way we behave, the way we operate in society is absolutely essential. So it doesn't matter which religion the person is following, because most of the religions talk about the very same things, right? They have the very same values in the core, and they talk about the very same kind of relations with the divine. But a simple way to understand if something is a part of an attack or not is just to understand what is it leading to. Is it leading to destruction? Or is it leading to constructive approaches? So when you analyze politics, when you analyze geopolitics, when you analyze this kind of things, asking simple questions in most cases is quite enough. So could it be possible that genocide that's happening in Palestine could be justified? What could possibly be a reason that makes it okay to be killing civilians, including children, women, and to be killing people that are not even able to protect themselves? Sure. There are territorial issues, and the state of Israel that was created not too long ago. How could it possibly be having the right to do so? Or when we talk about the regime in Ukraine that is trying to erase the history, that is trying to impose different kinds of values and culture and language on the people, destroying churches, attacking the very sacred symbolic places and facilities. Could it be possible that this is done in order to achieve a good aim? When we talk about neo-colonial methods that are being used in Africa, how could it be fine for one society to be basically extracting everything and making another society lose the resources and saying that it's a just and fair system? So asking simple question always is a very effective method. Having own relations with the divine, would it be religion, would it be some kind of a belief system or whatever else, and just trying to pay more attention to immediate reactions of the body. It's sometimes much more telling than thinking about something for hours and hours and hours.
Okay. Thank you for that, dear Yulia. With you, Professor Jagdish, let's look at this document. And the proponents of the document actually advocated that it is necessary because it helps the human being to be aware and understand narratives pertaining the issues of the global world. How feasible are some of the advantages advanced by the NATO alliance pertaining the idea of the imperativeness of cognitive superiority?
Well, I'm reminded of a book a few years back that was widely discussed, Clash of Civilizations by Samuel Huntington, which tried to build a narrative that their civilizations are in danger from the other civilizations, and this narrative had a great impact on minds of people as well as on geopolitical arena. We have seen the impact in the form of spreading Islamophobia or treating some countries as pariah and are enemies of the humanities, and then trying to justify all the actions taken by some powers to spread this narrative and act upon it. So this has been a continuous exercise going on since many decades, and it is having its own harmful effects visible. And it is now added by the social media explosion, the information technology implosion, and the kind of networks that we have, so that the things are spread. And narratives, all the emphasis is on building a narrative that suits you. So we have seen weaponization of all kinds, weaponization of information, weaponization of natural resources, and even weaponization of COVID vaccines, where some nations try to hoard it from other nations so that some part of the nations, they are starved of vaccines. So we are seeing all kinds of weaponization taking place in all possible ways. And but again, I would say that it is not the time for wars. Yes, we need defense preparedness, defense against climate change, defense against pandemics, defense against inequality, and defense against the forces that are dividing the societies. So let us concentrate on that. Let us try to utilize our precious resources for spreading right kind of education, right kind of values and information. I simply can't understand. On the one hand, we are ready to spend billions of dollars in exploration of life in other planets. And at the same time, we are wasting billions of dollars in destruction of the life that we already have on this planet. So there has to be some logic behind it, and all the political leaders, social leaders, religious people, they need to sit together and find out ways so that the right kind of narratives are built up and people are educated enough to understand what is good for them in the future. Thank you.
It's about understanding what is good and making appraisals, especially in this very turbulent world, be able to actually abreast the situation that happening. Now, coming back to you, ARNAUD, you know, the document actually has its strategic objectives, which are outlined as enhancing strategic communication, countering disinformation, and promoting cognitive reliance within all nations, nations which are allied to the NATO. The question is, to what extent has NATO succeeded in fighting the ills of disinformation, promoting this cognitive resilience in present-day society?
Well, I would say, unfortunately, that they have enjoyed a measure of success. Now, what's interesting is to actually examine the terminology that is used in those position papers, because it's almost like they are somehow talking amongst initiates of some kind of cult or some kind of sect. When they talk about misinformation, they mean by that any information that is contrary to what set of facts or what version of reality they want to impose on their own subjects or on the minds of people who live in those countries where NATO runs the show, essentially. So it's almost like they're more concerned about people that live under their sway than trying to convince the people living under the sway of the given enemy of the day. And that's, to me, very revealing of a internal contradiction, which over the long run is bound to really become problematic for NATO as far as coming to grip with this auto-intoxication campaign that they are waging. Because let's make no mistake about it, we are dealing with an edifice, an ideological edifice, which is not very solid on its foundation, that knows that its time is counted, and it's only kind of always apprehending the future in a reactive posture, not as a proactive, confident one. So this is the first element that somehow seems to jump to my attention when I read those documents. We are really talking about people who do not suffer any kind of, again, deviation from the agreed upon script. And so what this will, we can only assume anyway, happen is that lacking a diversity of views and a critical approach to empirical facts, they will basically find themselves increasingly isolated in what is essentially an echo chamber. And so they will start making assumption on the way a situation, any given X or Y situation, evolving in a certain direction, but predicated on a flawed approach to the predicate from which those directions are predicated on. So this is actually, to me, the terminal stage of a situation that sees a complex, NATO complex, which for the last 30 years has struggled to redefine itself to the extent that it could not come out in the open and say, we are the tool aimed at ensuring world domination for a transnational elite, essentially. And so to the extent they could not come out and say so in, a plain fashion, they've had to constantly, I would say, tinkle with the linguistics of it. And this is how, what leads to, and you were showing Jens Stoltenberg picture, speeches of those gray three-piece suit creatures making no sense whatsoever. I mean, those people, I don't even believe they understand what they're talking about themselves. It's so predicated, almost like in a scene reminiscent of what might have happened in the bunker of Adolf Hitler in the warning days of World War II, with maps being rolled out on large tables, and Hitler himself, moving non-existent divisions, left, right, and center, until with no one daring in the room to tell him, we do not have, those divisions. They are being wiped out. And so, history basically is a very harsh judge. If, the lesson is not learned properly, history takes it upon itself to remind those who would believe that they can somehow escape from the laws of historical, poor judgment, they will find themselves again caught like a deer in the headlights. And this is basically what I'm always tempted into coming to conclusion with when I read those documents. And the same applies to the defense doctrine of the United States Armed Forces. I mean, one could easily say and dismiss this as somehow some kind of a pony show, dog and pony show aimed at securing congressional funding. But there's more to it than that. It might have been true about 30 years ago, before the neocons really took control of foreign policy. Yeah. But now with the neocons, someone is fond to say about them that they do not know the meaning of reverse gear. And so they keep doubling down in their mistake, so convinced that they are always on the side of reason or on the side of good, whatever that means, good, okay, bad. It's almost like they've drank their own Kool-Aid as far as this dichotomy, this cheap dichotomy peddled by the Hollywood complex, which, let's make no mistake about it, plays a crucial role in the molding of Western minds.
Indeed, making it very problematic. At this juncture, Yulia, we are looking at the position of NATO alliance and, of course, the personal priorities of nations that make up this alliance, and also the position of people who are contrary to the idea or the document of presented by the NATO alliance in 2020, accentuating on this cognitive warfare. What do you think it's that point of compromise where together the party like the NATO alliance and other countries or parties which are against a document like this, with putting into consideration the effects on the human mind? What strategies can be used to engage in a meaningful warfare or cognitive warfare that will instead benefit the world rather than put the mind in chaos, as actually has been concluded by critics of the document?
This document that we're talking about today is just one of many documents that are published, released, and that are 100% available to the public. So imagine what is not available to the public. I mean, if this kind of things can be accessed by anyone, read by anyone, imagine what all of those think tanks, research facilities, and specialists are working on, not just in terms of theory, but also in terms of practice. So I think, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And if we dive deeper into the muddy water, we will see many other things that at the moment are just hidden from the public eye. So given the fact that many of those documents and many of those strategies, many of those descriptions are available in public space, I mean, I would just suggest to go through the materials that are published by NATO and its institutions, that are published by the CIA, just to have a surface, at least a surface understanding of what kind of paradigm we're actually living in. Yeah. And when you start studying this kind of subjects, you realize that there is almost nowhere to hide from it, because those methods are being implemented into and they're being used in what we call the mass culture, which is video clips of celebrities, films, movies, various kinds of performances, and everything else. And there is nowhere to hide from those ads, right? Because the social networks, the types of content that the social networks suggest to us and everything, A lot of it is aimed at shaping our minds in a certain way or distracting us from thinking, distracting us from reflection, and distracting us from following the path that individuals or personalities would find much more appropriate for themselves. So even a brief analysis is quite enough to understand that there has to be prevention and protection in order not to be manipulated into something that could possibly lead to death or to life full of suffering, right? And here I imply not just being a victim of another military conflict, but also living the life that is very far from its original purpose. And we need to understand that disassembling the infrastructure that was created to promote those purposes would also either be very painful or take a while, because there could be a lot of frustration, a lot of sadness, depression, and other negative emotions following up on this dismantling or disassembling process, because a lot of the things that were already have already grown in our heads, they would be proven to be actually destructive. So sometimes when you have conversations with the people that have never eyewitnessed something, but they strongly believe that they know the truth, you can see how emotional they get in trying to promote those points. And triggering emotions is definitely one of the methods of this kind of cognitive warfare. Mostly what is being triggered is aggression, hatred, this kind of emotions or frustrations, or just taking you through a whole emotional roller coaster so that you get involved into the subject. And the actual aim of much of the fake news and the fake content that is being disseminated, for example, in order to show that Palestinians are somehow deserving the kind of treatment and the kind of death that they're getting, it's absolutely crazy. So when you go through that long path, at some point, you're not even realizing that you're following somebody else's social engineering strategy. And when you find yourself somewhere very far from the original, you might be shocked by how far you have gone. It's essential to be aware in the first place, and to be aware about the methods that are being used within the concept of the cognitive warfare. And just to know that the brains and the hearts of the people are the actual battlefield of the current global confrontation.
Indeed, in line with what Yulia just highlighted, Professor Jagdish, it brings us to this question of what are the challenges in balancing these security measures to counter disinformation and propaganda, while indeed upholding freedom of expression, and how can countries particularly navigate this delicate balance?
I am reminded of another quotation, that is, those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. And it's time we put attention to it, whatever our mistakes have been there, whatever wrong priorities we have taken so far, and learn from it. It's time for survival and revival. Survival of the planet and revival of the humanity. That is the most important task that we have. And in this globalization era of interconnectedness and as well as interdependence, we need to collaborate with each other in pooling our resources, our expertise for bringing out solutions to the problems that the whole planet is facing. We had a thing like COVID pandemic, which perhaps should have taught us few lessons, but perhaps we have not learned from those mistakes. And it's time that we divert our precious resources from weapons manufacturing to education, healthcare, and right infrastructure, and for removing the inequality. And once there's equity and equality in the societies, it will be able to navigate from the ill effects of such warfare. So that is my prescription.
Thank you, Professor Jagdish. Back to you, Arnaud DEVELAY. When we listen to the points which have been presented so far, we see, of course, the complexities of the NATO's cognitive warfare. And the question is now, how can we, let's focus the debate on the vital aspects of modern security and defense strategies in order to counteract issues like misinformation, propaganda, which has been highlighted so far in the course of the program.
Well, I think the last thing we want to do is engage into those cognitive games that NATO is attempting to impose on, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, their own populations, but also populations that are out of reach. Obviously, the American dream, if we want to look at but one of those staples of NATO cognitive warfare, is anything but a dream these days, and everybody can see it. People travel still, I don't know for how long, but they do still travel. And when we see someone like Tucker Carlson coming to Russia, and basically filming short, small, efficient clips of himself, whether it's in the public transportation or in the supermarkets, you can make sure that the message is very efficient, and it shows that a big dissonance between what the populations in the West are being told about those revisionist countries, as they call the non-Western world. Revisionist, why? Because they aim to call into question the order of post-World War II, and more specifically the unipolar moment. But basically, yes, this is what it takes. It's reality. And so the last thing we want to do is try to argue with someone who's crazy. You don't argue with crazy people. You just put them away, or you just put them to sleep, to put it colloquially. And this is the same thing with all the collective West and their organs and instruments.
The stakes are looking.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Warfare, and how the human mind has been made to become a weapon, or the complexities of this document in the war, the time of informational war, in the time of heightened geopolitical tension, like Arnaud DEVELAY was highlighting earlier on, pointing out the fact that on the ground reporting, or having a natural appraiser of situations on the ground can make one to better appraise the situation that is happening regarding the differences that we have in today's war, especially in today's ideological war that seems to be very high in this quest of a multipolar world among superpowers, who stands against, who dominates, and we are looking at where is the place of the human mind, and of course, where is or how can we handle the susceptibility of the vulnerable society that cannot independently use the mind to appraise the situations in the complex geopolitical dynamics, and bringing us again to ask the question on how we can, center or improve accountability and attribution in identifying perpetrators behind, cognitive warfare attacks, especially in the realm of cyber operations, to ensure a robust response. Those are some of the questions that we continue to ask as we navigate through the document, and just to read a segment of the document which said that the Ottawa Citizen reported, that was in September 2021 when this document was made public, that the Canadian military's joint operations command took advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic to wage an information war against its own domestic population, testing out propaganda tactics on Canadian civilians. And this, of course, it's a section of the document that was actually brought to the fore, and we continue to analyze the complexities of these the cognitive warfare, and looking at ways on how we can mitigate the consequences or the effect on the human society. Coming back to you, Arnaud DEVELAY, you were actually developing a point regarding how on the ground reporting for journalists, and also for analysts, if they can visit this environment, that will make a better appraisal of the real situations on the ground, to be able to come to a conclusion regarding some of these ideological points which are being advanced with a well-defined agenda. Arnaud DEVELAY.
Well, not everybody can travel to Russia, obviously. So I would say I would quote General Flynn. General Flynn was pretty clear-eyed and clear-minded about what can be done to upend the NATO cognitive warfare. He basically said that you should use memes. Memes are perfect because they are very simple visual artifact. Yulia mentioned earlier the red and green signal coding. Memes are perfectly suitable for a Western population that has basically turned into some kind of consumeristic, passive, aggressive mental profiles, so psychological profiles. So we should basically keep it simple, and we should articulate memes with occasional reporting on the ground from people who enjoy a substantial media platform. And over time, it will, as reality at the same time, slowly but surely grinds itself into, the daily lives of those people that we're trying to wake up, essentially, because it's trying to wake him up. This will do the trick. That's a very simple. We don't need to resort to convoluted terminologies and all this nonsense that you read about in those documents. Those people are institutional expression of a worldview and a administrative structure that has outlasted its usefulness. So those people are still living in the past. They're still living in, those are for internal consumption. so that, those who basically, as you said, are ideologically prepped and kosher enough to work for those structures, they can somehow understand what's being talked about. But anybody with a modicum of common sense will not understand. But only one thing reading those things is that it's basically a lot of waste of paper and not a waste of ink. Like I say, on the ground report, first-hand experience, a few well strategically placed actor enjoying wide media platform, and an avalanche of memes. This will get us through the storm until winter is over, and reality of an imploding model in the West with an imploding economy, a highly velocious rate of dropping in education, not to mention what will inevitably happen, because you have now the whole world moving into the Western lands. And so when free money, when the Western money printing press stops churning out money, they will have their hands full. So we just have to basically, until then, churn out, our own memes, like I say, and they go a long way. And we can see that somebody won an election 8 years ago on memes. So this is how easy it is. And in front of him, he was facing, the establishment's party, equipped with their billions of dollars in ads and infrastructure and all the institutional backup that they could imagine. And someone came out of nowhere and basically kicked the whole chess board on its face, and completely departed from the agreed upon lexicon, and used memes until there was no tomorrow. And next thing you know, there's nothing they could do about it. They were completely disarmed. So what I would say is the strategy is do not play on the enemy's terms. Create your own terms and never feel sorry for, and don't fall into this ad hominem attacks that they will try to use you. Those things, we've seen it in the context of the genocide going on now. A lot of people are sick and tired of being called certain monikers because it's too real and it's 24/7. And it's coming from people who, by and large, have been trying to moralize the West for the last 80 years about a whole range of things and activities related to what they seem to be engaging into right now. So there's a lot of memes here, if you get my meaning, that could be produced and that everybody would understand, again, because it's not hidden. It's in the open. People can see it. And so, the whole narrative, the whole ideological edifice is collapsing. And there's nothing they can do about it, which is why we see now anti-free speech laws being adopted. Because the machine is gripping it, the machine is somehow grinding to a halt. There's no more oil to fluidify all those parts. And it's looking increasingly evident and obvious for an increasing amount of people. And so that's what I would have to say about all this, basically. Just time is on our side, on the side of the commonsensical people who know what they need to know, and don't resort to, again, feeling left out because, they somehow seem at a loss to espouse the so-called sophisticated language used in those
Thank you.
white papers or working documents.
Thank you so much, ARNAUD. DEVELAY. We're going to end with you, dear Yulia, just briefly, trying to understand, see some of those aspects that, NATO could use to be able to, give reason to its, cognitive warfare. And of course, this is just to, to bring understanding to what the document would have been or how it would have been better to save humanity.
Well, it looked like with the current level of escalation, when there are a lot of conflicts that are at the moment not fueled yet, but could possibly be fueled, and a lot of victims every day, basically, that lose their life for somebody else's interest and power and control and resources. I think it's time to recognize that saving the humanity is in the hands of each human being, right? And the best way is not to be waiting for a superhero to come and save the planet, but build the superhero within ourselves. So the only way that could be guaranteed and the only thing that we can actually control is ourselves. So starting from ourselves, however trivial it could possibly sound, is one of the best ways. And nothing is guaranteed, that's for sure. But at the same time, we should recognize our own responsibility for what is happening on the planet, because some of the conflicts and some of the wars that we see happening is not only because the evil whatever, the evil West, the evil East, the evil South, or whatever else, but because we let it happen. And our silent support creates opportunities for this kind of things that are definitely anti-humane, starting from, suppression of human will, from, modern day slavery and everything else. It starts from our silent consent. So we need to recognize that as well, and just to take a more active position in life, because you see that all of it is published, all of it is for our review, and we need just to see what can be done within the controllable environment around us in order to provide some changes at the global level. Of course, efforts of one individual would not guarantee the overall success, but the more of that kind of responsible and conscious individuals we have, the more chances there are that the project humanity will not fail and will not just die in a nuclear war.
And that last insight from Yulia brings us to the end of today's program, Global Insight. I want to appreciate you, Yulia BERG, Professor JAGDISH KATHRI, and ARNAUD DEVELAY for the insightful analysis in today's edition of Knowledge Sharing, and of course, which centered on the NATO's cognitive warfare, analyzing the effect this will have on the human mind and how this negative aspect of it can be mitigated. Thank you all for trusting the Pan-African Television for You Media Africa. We remain at your service, and always have in mind that it is another view of the world. Bye-bye.